My wife and I were struggling, but this time she shamed me in front of her family, threatening to leave. "You're useless, can't even afford the bills," she said, tossing my wallet on the table. "She deserves more," her sister's husband chuckled, eyeing my car. I didn't react, just walked away. 4 days later, they were frantic. My voicemail had 13 messages begging me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over Willow Creek, I couldn't help but feel the chill in the air was more than just the autumn weather. It was a reflection of the cold reality that had settled into my life. My name is Mark Thompson, and until recently I was a software developer with dreams as big as the sky. But dreams like the leaves outside had begun to fall. Tonight, Emily and I were at her parents' house for dinner. The house, a quaint cottage with a wraparound porch, was filled with the aroma of roast chicken and the murmur of family chatter. But beneath the surface, there was a tension, a silent storm brewing that even the warmth of the hearth couldn't dispel. Emily's sister, Sarah, and her husband, Tom, were there too. Sarah, always the more successful sibling, had just landed a promotion at her law firm. Tom, with his booming voice and easy laugh, seemed to fit right in with the affluence that surrounded us. But for me, every smile felt forced, every laugh hollow. I sat at the table, the clinking of cutlery against plates sounding like the ticking of a clock counting down to my next failure. Emily, my rock, my love, was beside me, her hand occasionally squeezing mine under the table, a silent reassurance. But her eyes, when they met mine, were filled with a mix of concern and something else. Disappointment, perhaps? The conversation flowed around us, touching on everything from local politics to the latest gossip at the school where Emily taught. I tried to engage, to show that I was still the man she married, but every word felt like a stone in my throat. Then, as the plates were cleared away, the atmosphere shifted. Emily's father, a retired engineer with a sharp wit, turned to me. "So, Mark, any new projects on the horizon?" His tone was light, but the question was loaded, heavy with the unspoken accusation of my recent unemployment. I opened my mouth to respond, but Emily cut in, her voice sharp. "Dad, let's not talk about work tonight, please." The room fell silent, the only sound the crackling of the fire. The tension was palpable now, like a thick fog rolling in. Sarah, trying to lighten the mood, mentioned something about a new restaurant opening in town, but her words were drowned out by the rising tide of frustration within Emily. As the evening wore on, the unspoken pressures of our financial strain began to seep into every conversation, every glance. Emily's patience, usually as vast as the ocean, was now a mere puddle, and I could see it drying up with each passing minute. Finally, as dessert was served, Emily's frustration reached its zenith. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor, a sound that echoed the screeching halt of our once stable life. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. "I can't pretend everything is fine when it's not." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of our crumbling reality. The dinner conversation had shifted from light-hearted family anecdotes to the harsh reality of our financial situation. Emily's father, George, a retired accountant, had just finished explaining the importance of financial planning when Emily, unable to contain her frustration any longer, slammed her fork down. "You're useless, can't even afford the bills," she said, her voice trembling with anger as she tossed my wallet onto the table, spilling its meager contents for all to see. The room fell silent, the clatter of the wallet echoing like a gavel in a courtroom. My face flushed with embarrassment, my eyes darting around the room, meeting the pitying or judgmental looks of her in-laws. Tom, Sarah's husband, who had always been somewhat condescending towards me, chuckled. "She deserves more." His eyes lingered on my old, battered car visible through the window, a stark contrast to his own shiny new SUV parked beside it. Feeling the weight of every gaze, I stood up silently. Without a word, I walked out of the house, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. My heart pounded with humiliation and anger, but I kept walking, not knowing where I was going, just needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere. As I walked down the quiet street, the sound of my footsteps was the only noise in the still night. My mind raced with thoughts of failure, of letting Emily down, of the life we had envisioned slipping through our fingers like sand. The streetlights cast long shadows, mirroring the darkness that had enveloped my life. I found myself at the edge of Willow Creek where the water flowed with a deceptive calm. I sat on the cold, damp grass, staring into the dark, swirling waters. The creek seemed to whisper to me, its voice a mix of comfort and condemnation. "Mark," it seemed to say, "you've lost your way, but what are you going to do about it?" The chill in the air was biting now, seeping through my clothes, but it was nothing compared to the chill in my heart. I thought about Emily, her face when she looked at me, the love that was now shadowed by doubt and disappointment. I pulled out my phone, the screen lighting up the darkness around me. No messages, no missed calls, just the stark reality of our situation. I scrolled through old photos, memories of happier times, of laughter and dreams that seemed so tangible back then. But now, those dreams felt like they belonged to someone else, someone who hadn't lost his job, who hadn't let his wife
down.
I knew I had to do something, anything, to reclaim my dignity, to show Emily that I wasn't just a failure, that I was still the man she fell in love with. As I stood up, brushing the grass from my jeans, a resolve hardened within me. I wasn't going to let this be the end of our story. Not like this. Not with her family's judgmental eyes, I wandered aimlessly through the streets, the cold wind doing little to cool my burning cheeks. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the memory of Emily's harsh words, the judgmental looks of her family. The night was dark, the stars hidden behind clouds, much like the future I couldn't see. My feet led me to a familiar place, a local bar I hadn't visited since my college days. The neon sign flickered, casting a dim light on the sidewalk. Inside, the warmth of the bar contrasted sharply with the chill outside. I ordered a drink, the glass cold in my hand, and sat at the bar lost in thought. Then I heard a voice, one I hadn't heard in years. "Mark? Is that you?" I turned to see Jake, an old friend from college, now looking every bit the successful entrepreneur with his tailored suit and confident smile. We exchanged greetings, and soon, over a few drinks, I found myself pouring out my troubles. Jake listened, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. "You know, Mark, I might have something for you," he said, his eyes lighting up with an idea. "My startup is about to launch an app that could change the tech world. We need someone with your skills. What do you say?" In my desperation, I didn't hesitate. "I'm in," I replied, the words feeling like a lifeline thrown into the stormy sea of my life. Jake clapped me on the back and we toasted to new beginnings, though I didn't realize the magnitude of what I had just agreed to. The next 4 days were a blur. I threw myself into work, coding, debugging, and meeting with investors. My skills, which had felt so useless at Emily's family dinner, were now invaluable. We finalized a deal with a major tech firm, securing millions in investment. The breakthrough was imminent, and I was at the heart of it. Meanwhile, back at home, Emily was grappling with her own storm. Her words from that night haunted her, each one a reminder of the hurt she had inflicted. Days passed without my return, and panic set in. She started calling, leaving messages, each one more desperate than the last. "Mark, please, I'm sorry, come home, we need to talk." Her voice trembled through the voicemail. But I was too consumed by work, by the need to prove myself to respond. As the days turned into nights, Emily's family began to worry. Her mother, always the peacemaker, tried to reach out to me, but her calls went unanswered. Emily's father, George, was less forgiving. "He's probably off sulking somewhere," he muttered, not understanding the gravity of my absence. The twist of fate came when Emily, in her frantic search for me, stumbled upon an article about Jake's startup. There in the photo was me, standing beside Jake, looking every bit the part of a successful tech innovator. Her heart sank, realizing I hadn't just walked away from our argument, but had walked into a new life without her. The cliffhanger unfolded as Emily, driven by a mix of hope and despair, decided to confront me at the startup's office. She arrived, unannounced, her heart pounding, only to find the office buzzing with activity. She spotted me through the glass wall of a conference room, engaged in a heated discussion about the app's next phase. Emily's presence didn't go unnoticed. Jake, ever the observant one, saw her and approached with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Emily, what brings you here?" he asked, his voice carrying a tone of surprise. Her eyes locked with mine through the glass, and in that moment, the unexpected discovery was made. Not just by Emily, but by me too. The realization that my absence had not just been about proving my worth, but about escaping the reality of our crumbling marriage. The question now was, could we salvage what was left, or had I, in my quest for redemption, lost the most important part of my life? 4 days after the dinner, the tension at the Thompson house was palpable. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, her phone in hand, scrolling through the list of unanswered calls to Mark. Each missed call was a silent plea for him to come back, each message an apology, a promise to make things right. But there was no response, only the echo of her own voice in the voicemails she left. "Mark, please, I'm sorry. Come home. We need to talk," she whispered into the phone, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and despair. But the screen remained dark, no return call, no text. Just the stark reality of their situation. The house felt empty without him, the silence oppressive. Emily's parents tried to mediate, to bring some semblance of peace, but the situation was spiraling. Her mother, always the peacemaker, had been, calling Mark too, her voice gentle and coaxing. "Mark, dear, we just want to understand. Please come back so we can sort this out." But Emily's father, George, was less forgiving. "He's probably off sulking somewhere," he muttered, his tone laced with irritation, not understanding the gravity of Mark's absence or the depth of the rift that had formed. In the midst of this familial disarray, Tom, Sarah's husband, felt a pang of responsibility. He remembered Mark mentioning Jake's bar, a place where Mark had once found solace in college. With a mix of guilt and determination, Tom decided to take matters into his own hands. He drove through the quiet streets of Willow Creek, the town's quaint charm now feeling like a facade for the turmoil within his own family. Upon arriving at Jake's bar, the neon sign flickered, casting a dim light on the sidewalk. Inside, the atmosphere was warm, filled with the murmur of conversations and the clink of glasses. Tom scanned the room, his eyes finally landing on Jake, who was at the bar, his usual confident demeanor in place. "Jake," Tom called out, approaching. "Him." Jake turned, his face lighting up with recognition. "Tom, what brings you here?" Jake asked, his voice carrying a hint of surprise. Tom took a deep breath, his voice low. "It's about Mark. He's been missing since the dinner. Emily's worried sick. Have you seen him?" Jake's expression shifted, a thoughtful look crossing his features. "Actually, yes. Mark's been here, working with me. We're about to celebrate a big success with our new app." Tom felt a mix of relief and confusion. "Can you tell me where he is now? Emily needs to see him." Jake nodded, understanding the urgency. "He's at the office, probably still working. It's not far from here. I can take you." As they drove to the startup's office, Tom's mind raced with what he would say, how he would bridge the gap that had widened between Mark and Emily. The office was buzzing with activity, a stark contrast to the quiet despair at the Thompson house. Through the glass wall of a conference room, Tom spotted Mark, deeply engaged in a discussion, his face animated, a stark contrast to the defeated man who had walked out of dinner. Jake led Tom inside, and as they approached, Mark looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. "Tom? What are you doing here?" Tom took a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Mark, Emily's been trying to reach you. She's sorry, and she needs you to come back. We all do." Mark's face softened, the weight of the past few days evident in his eyes. I didn't know what to do, Tom. I felt like I had to prove something not just to her, but to myself." Jake, sensing the gravity of the moment, stepped back, giving them space. "Mark, this isn't just about proving yourself. It's about your life with Emily. She's out there, waiting, hoping you'll come back." The room fell silent. The only sound, the hum of the office around them. Mark's gaze drifted to the window, where the night outside mirrored the darkness he felt within. The question now hung in the air. Heavy with the weight, I rushed back to Emily with the news, my heart pounding, with a mix of relief and anxiety. The car ride was silent, the tension palpable, as we drove to the startup's office where the launch party was in full swing. When we arrived, the office was buzzing with excitement. The air was electric, filled with the chatter of investors, developers, and tech enthusiasts. I could see Mark through the glass walls of the conference room, his sharp suit making him stand out, his confidence restored, his demeanor transformed from the man who had walked out of dinner just days ago. Emily approached him, her heart in her throat, her steps hesitant yet determined. Mark, seeing her, paused mid-sentence, his expression unreadable. The room quieted. As everyone sensed the tension, the music fading into the background. "Mark." Emily's voice was barely a whisper, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry for what I said, for how I made you feel. I was scared, frustrated, and I took it out on you." Mark listened, his face softening as he stepped closer to her. "I understand," he said, his voice calm, his eyes searching hers. "But I needed to find my worth again, not just for you, but for myself." The crowd, which had been holding its breath, erupted in applause. It wasn't just for the app's success, but for the emotional reunion unfolding before them. Emily stepped into Mark's embrace, the tension dissolving into a moment of genuine connection. As the applause continued, I stood back, watching the scene unfold. The resolution of their personal conflict amidst professional triumph left everyone in the room wondering, what's next for Mark and Emily? Would this be the start of a new chapter, or merely a pause in their ongoing story? The night was still young, the party in full swing, but for Mark and Emily, the real celebration was in the quiet understanding they had just shared. They stood together, hands clasped, looking out over the crowd, their future uncertain but filled, with the promise of reconciliation and perhaps a renewed love. In the days that followed the launch, the air between Emily and me began to clear like the morning mist over Willow Creek. We sat down, not just to talk, but to truly listen to each other. The success of the app had brought not only financial stability but also a renewed sense of purpose for me. But more than that, it was the realization that our relationship needed as much attention as any project I'd ever worked on. Emily, with her characteristic grace, took the first step towards healing. She admitted her part in our marital strain, the words she had hurled in anger, the frustration that had clouded her judgment. "I was wrong, Mark," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "I let fear and worry dictate how I treated you. I'm sorry." Her apology was like a balm to my wounded pride. We agreed to seek counseling, not just for the sake of fixing what was broken, but to build something stronger, something that could weather any storm. The sessions were tough, peeling back layers of resentment and misunderstanding, but with each meeting we grew closer, our bond fortified by mutual respect and understanding. The transformation was palpable, not just in our relationship, but in our lives. Emily's laughter returned, a sound that had been absent for too long, filling our home with warmth. I found myself smiling more, not just at the success of the app, but at the simple joy of being with her, of seeing her eyes light up when she talked about her students, or when she shared a new idea for our future. Our home, once a battleground of unspoken words and suppressed emotions, now echoed with the sounds of life. The family dinner we hosted was a testament to this change. The table was set with care, the aroma of Emily's cooking wafting through the air, a stark contrast to the tension that had once hung heavy in this very room. As the family gathered, there was an ease, a lightness that hadn't been there before. Sarah, with her usual poise, complimented the meal, her eyes twinkling with genuine warmth. Tom, less condescending now, shared stories from his work, his laughter genuine, his eyes occasionally meeting mine with a nod of respect. The conversation flowed freely, touching on everything from the latest tech trends to the upcoming school play Emily was directing. My new car, a symbol of our newfound stability, sat proudly in the driveway, but it was the smiles, the shared glances between Emily and me, that truly signified our journey from despair to hope. As the evening drew to a close, I stood to propose a toast. To new beginnings, I said, raising my glass. To understanding, to growth, and to love. Emily's hand found mine, her fingers intertwining with mine, a silent promise of our commitment to each other. The family raised their glasses, the clink of crystal echoing in the room, a harmonious note to the symphony of our reconciliation. As we drank, the camera, if there had been one, would have panned out, capturing the scene of unity, of a family coming together, of a couple rediscovering each other. But as the toast ended, there was a moment, a brief pause, where the future seemed to stretch out before us, filled with possibilities. Would this be the start of a new chapter, or merely a pause in our ongoing story? The question lingered, not just in the air, but in our hearts, as we looked out over the crowd, our future uncertain, yet filled with the promise of a brighter, shared journey. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.